We haven't been here in a hot minute. I know we've had very busy schedules. A lot of things were happening, but look, we are back and we're better and we're ready to bring you content now for a daily basis because we still got a lot going on, but we want to get through everything for the 2025-2026 season. We want to get through our top 25s. We want to get through recruiting and make sure y'all have the best experience possible. So here's to it. What do we have first, K-Mac?
Yeah, so up first we have some very timely and definitely not at all postponed news. As you know, we're recording this the week after the national championship game.
Yep.
Definitely, that's how that works. As opposed to others who say they don't believe in an off season and then engage in it. We actually don't believe in an off season so much that we just forgot about it. So, we have the amazing news to congratulating our champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes, who won a national championship game. And as a result, now all of the Michigan crimes are forgiven, apparently. Um, I'm not sure I quite believe that, but it was a great run from them. And I think that Ohio State this year is a team that really exemplifies what I think college football is turning into and what could be problematic about it. But we're going to talk about that later. And then the other big news, Kirtan, it's your favorite quarterback of all time.
The GOAT has sadly left the Bulldogs. I know, guys. I know it's a total shock because he was just so good at football. He only threw maybe 20 interceptions and only threw maybe 10 touchdowns, but he was the GOAT. He's officially left us for his ex girlfriend, who he then cheated on and is now stuck in Miami. He is making bank. I mean, the guy is making $4.3 million. So I will not badmouth you anymore, Carson Beck. But you are now part of the U. So now we have Gunnar Stockton. Some would say he's the chosen one to lead Georgia Bulldogs into battle. And Miami, good job paying, good job rolling out the red carpet for a guy who literally couldn't even stick with a team and is literally not even that good at football. That if he was to enter into the draft, he would have probably gone undrafted. But I'm not salty, not salty, not salty. Actually, I'm not because I didn't even want him on the team. But anyways, Carson Beck, yes, he is gone from the Bulldogs. Congrats, Miami. Let's see if that'll even help get even close to what Cam Ward was. Highly doubt it.
Yeah, so one thing I'm going to say is that for Mario Cristobal, I think he might be the best recruiter in terms of fit that this world has ever seen because he was able to get someone who exemplifies Miami just so well. And I really think, Miami, you have to recruit to their strengths, right? Like the last time they won a national championship, it was with Ray Lewis and the
Agreed.
Jailhouse Rock bunch.
Yeah.
So I really think that that's, you've got to go, you got to play to your strengths. And as long as you win the game, it doesn't matter where they spend the Sunday. As long as you win the game, it is fine. They can hit up that Miami-Dade County Penitentiary as long as you win on the Saturday and as long as they're back by the next one. So, that's if that's your recruiting style, go for it. And we wish you the best, Miami. Try not to get anybody killed. Um,
Exactly.
so, in other news, this is a little more current. Shador Sanders keeps getting done for speeding. Turns out instead
Yeah.
of going to the draft, he should have transferred to the Georgia Bulldogs. Um, but what can you do? Sometimes you make the wrong decision, you go the wrong direction, and then you have to pay for the consequences. And I guess the Cleveland Browns will be doing just that.
I mean, the Cleveland Browns do have a good history with probably felons. We should just say, we'll say felons because I don't want to get demonetized for talking about the Clemson Heisman quarterback, or not even a Heisman quarterback, but the Clemson quarterback that they used to have. So, anyways, let's get off of that topic real fast and move on to something more interesting. So, we get it. We've been gone for maybe a good amount of time and we've missed the off season, but now let's really get into the meat of the season. It's already June, becoming into July. So let's get into the actual meat of the season and let's talk about what is the biggest trophy, the Heisman front runners for next year. K-Mac, who do we have for 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, so it won for some ungodly reason. We have Arch Manning. I Far be it from me to explain the whims and habits of Vegas, but it seems a little premature. From a Texas fan who has seen, let me count. Ellinger, Ewers, then how far back can we go? Basically, since Colt McCoy, Texas has had this illustrious string of all right quarterbacks. Hudson Card, um, so many other guys. The reason I can't think of their names is because I don't remember them. Um, and they played well. Ellinger had his moments, was a great quarterback. He developed very well. So did Ewers at times. It depends. He played pretty well overall, but Texas hasn't had a star quarterback since Colt McCoy, and hasn't had, I wouldn't say, an elite star quarterback since Vince Young. That's 2005. That's older than either of us. So I think it's important to remember that while he's very highly rated in the recruiting process, while he looked good last year, while it looks like he can run, it looks like he has that kind of talent, I don't know that he is Heisman material. Because it really seems like he's going to be a one and done kind of guy. That he's going to play this year and then go to the draft. Now, while that's the plan in July, if that's going to be the plan in September, I don't know. Or if that's going to be the plan in October, November, December, once you see him play those games, I have no idea. It would seem to be that he's just going to ride the hype, right? But I think I have questions about his game, right? He's looked flustered at times. He's made perhaps not exactly the right decision, right? And some quarterbacks, when they play, you see it. Even if they miss the throw, even if you miss, they make a mistake or do something like that, you see that they're going in the right direction. They have the right instinct. And I am not 3,000% sure that I've seen that from him. Other people are, and that's okay. But I am not 1,000% sure that I've seen that from him. And I'm not sure that he is really warranted to be the Heisman favorite. I would perhaps favor a couple of the names a little lower down the list, like a Garrett Nussmeier, who is, kind of second on the list. And yes, he may not have quite the star potential, but he's been in the offense. He knows the offense. He's been in command there. So I think it's going to be beneficial for him. I think he can take a big step up. I think he can play really, really well.
Yeah, and here's the way I look at it. Arch Manning, you can always say like he's generational, and I mean we've seen sparks of it. We've seen it when he played against UTSA when Quinn Ewers went down and he lit it up. We saw it when he went into the A&M game and scored on the very first time he touched the ball. And they put him in these high pressure situations, I think, just to get him acclimated for how it's going to be this year. But putting him one is a little bit of a reach, and these are my reasons. Like Kieran said, he hasn't been the star guy. He's mainly been the backup that he's known because of his family and his bloodline, and that could be a reason that's contributing to all the hype. But he's also, if we do take it to the extreme and say he is a Cooper Flag, and for those who don't know, Cooper Flag was like the number one player in basketball, went to Duke, and then immediately joined the draft. I think we're going to see a similar situation with Arch Manning because unless Arch Manning really cares for Texas so much that he is choosing to return for an extra year and he wants to see them win, I don't know if putting him this high up, and I don't know if all that makes sense. I'm just saying, I think it's lack of experience is really going to get him. I don't think we can put someone up here who really hasn't had command over the team. And then, like Kieran said, these other players that are lower on the list, Garrett Nussmeier, Kate Klubnik, who we'll get into, they've been in the system and they've grown in the system, so they know exactly how everything works and how everything runs, and they can run a tight ship. And they are the captains of that team. People look up to them. And again, Texas may not have had the best team for years to come, and they've always been on this building up, building up, building up, building up. And I think that what's going to end up happening is Arch Manning is going to help them get over the edge, get to the top of the mountain. But will that really be a Heisman season, or will that just be because of the team that he's surrounded by? I feel like that's yet to be seen. So I have high hopes for Arch Manning. I think one is a bit of a reach. I think, honestly, if I was betting, I would put money on either one of the bottom, like one of the mid-pack maybe 2 to 5, because I don't know if Arch Manning, if you're going to get the odds on him that you want. But again, he could prove all of us wrong, like he seems to have already done by silencing the noise. So he is at 1. But next up is Garrett Nussmeier. Now, Nussmeier, he's been in LSU since Jane Daniels left. He's been the perennial guy. He was, I believe, Texas's all high school or the Gatorade Player of the Year for Texas. And this guy, he's running the system. I mean, I think the biggest issue with him is that he's yet to take a leap, and he's yet to become the dominant force at LSU, like we've seen with Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow. He's yet to become one of them where he really shines on his own. But I think that's just a ticking time bomb where you give him a little bit of time and he'll grow as a player and he'll grow as an individual and he'll become the guy that he was meant to be. He was going to become a Heisman player. And so that's my 2 cents on him. I mean, I feel like the SEC is really it's up in the air because, again, it's such a dominant conference that's so hard to pick one player. And I honestly think the SEC is going to dim everybody's light because it's going to be so competitive that you're not going to really see one person shine super bright. Like like Caleb Williams, like players like that. And so even Travis Hunter, how he did so well, and Ashton Genty, who got robbed, he did so well. And I think the SEC, it might be lowering people because of the fact of how competitive it is. But again, I don't know for a fact, so I'm gonna pass it to Kieran because I think he has more on this.
Yeah, so Garrett Nussmeier, the way I would exemplify his play is kind of slow and steady, and not in the way you think it's slow and steady. It's not that he's too patient or that he waits to make decisions until it's too late. It's that he's kind of a rhythm kind of guy. Like there are some people, the Cam Wards of this world, that it does not matter what the down and distance is. It does not matter what the situation is. It does not matter how many points you're down. It does not matter how much of a miracle you need, right? You're going to get that calm, cool, collected performance out of them. Garrett Nussmeier, to me, is not that. He's a little different. He really is kind of like a freight train, right? In the games where he gets going, he gets going. And he's going to be very hard to stop, very rhythmic, using the weapons, really running that offense from the command center, absolutely dialed in, putting the ball. He's had some amazing throws this past season, especially in big time moments where LSU has the momentum. But on the other hand, I think he can get easily flustered, especially last year, because you have to think about LSU's offensive line, right? They had the best tackles, I think, the best tackle pair in college football last year. Texas was close, a couple of others, Georgia, although they were better inside, and a couple of other offensive lines, maybe Oregon, had close to that amount of talent, but I don't think they had that talent. So when you look at a team like LSU, having that great talent on the edge means you have to think about this. When they go, maybe not full tilt, but when they're 11 on 11 in practice, and you've got the defensive starters on the offensive starters, Garrett is still not getting that much pressure. He is still not going to have that many problems in terms of having time and having a clear blocking picture. Because, yes, LSU has great edge talent. They do. But it's not the kind of edge talent that is going to break a tackle like they have, right? They're not going to break that rock solid tackle pairing for LSU consistently. They're just not going to do it. Yes, Harold Perkins is great. Yes, they have good edge talent. But at the end of the day, you have to think that he's not facing that much pressure. So sometimes when he gets sacked, when LSU gets behind the chains, when something bad happens, he can tend to make it just a little bit worse or play just a little bit too conservative, right? He's kind of like a freight train, but if you stick something on the tracks, then it's going to be very, very hard for him to get rolling again. And I think that could work to his benefit enormously in a Heisman campaign. Because say week 1, right? You play a good game. Week 2, you play a little better. Week 3, you play a little better. And then it creates this effect. Because if, presuming he doesn't get derailed, nothing bad happens, he's just building. He's just building. And that looks really, really good to Heisman voters. Because I don't know if you can tell, but Heisman voters, not all of them really watch football. But if Garrett Nussmeier is come week 12, come week 13, come week 14 in the headlines as that guy because he's built to that over the course of the season, not necessarily because he started there, but because he's ending there, then I would say that he's going to have a really good run at the Heisman. And then the next guy, and I think my personal favorite, is probably Cade Klubnik. So I like to point this out. Arch Manning, first-year starter. Garrett Nussmeier, second-year starter. Cade Klubnik, this will be his third year starting for Clemson. And that experience does a lot. His first year, he made mistakes. His first year, he had weapons to lean on. His first year, Clemson was pretty good. Last year, Clemson had some struggles. He didn't have as many weapons to lean on, and as much of that strength on the outside and in the running back core that he would like. Guys like Will Shipley and all of that. But eventually, you kind of notice late in the season, instead of relying on guys like Maffa or relying on the wide receiver talent on the edge, it was running through Cade Klubnik. Cade Klubnik was the reason that team was getting yards, scoring points, and touchdowns. He wasn't just there. He wasn't just dealing. He was actively the reason why. And I think that should not be forgotten in this Heisman conversation because he gets another offseason of development, some new plays, some little small coaching tips from Dabo, and then I think he could look even better. And I think that's going to be hard to beat because when the going gets hard and when it gets tough, Cade Klubnik has 2 years of experience and confidence to rely on. Garrett Nussmeier has 1, Arch Manning has none. So I think it's very important to consider that when you're talking about this overall conversation. But Kirtan, what do you think?
Yeah, and so regarding Cade Klubnik, like Kieran said, he's the only guy that's been built and bred into the system. And I think that's the excellence and precision of Dabo Swinney, is that he knows exactly what he's looking for in players and in certain situations, and that's why he maybe doesn't utilize the transfer portal as much as others. But I mean, it goes to show that he really is able to curate talent. And so, again, I've said it once and I've said it a million times, and I'll keep saying it. I used to watch Cade Klubnik when he was here in Westlake, and he's a very special player. He's very methodical, and he is very mobile, which is all great things to highlight because he's very accurate and he likes to make the right decisions. Now, when you're looking at this team, I mean, the thing about Clemson is that his first year they were really good. I mean, he did come in for DJ Ukulele, whatever his name is, Uyunglele, and then last year, the big issue was that they weren't able to defeat a couple of teams to get over the hump. They would struggle with NC State. They would struggle with teams in the ACC that were not necessarily on par for where you think Clemson football should be. But luckily, they were able to battle through adversity, and in the ACC championship, they beat SMU. Now, that's a great thing for everybody because of the fact that it gave them a shot at the playoffs. Again, this will no longer be the case anymore, as we'll get into later, the restructuring of the playoff situation. But what you need to know is that a lot of people have been looking at this team during the postseason, looking at spring practice, and have been saying, like, this team is built very well, and it's a very well-rounded team, from the likes of TJ Moore, who's been insane, Bryant Wesco, who's been great. They're bringing in a true freshman, Gideon Davidson, to be running back, and I think he's going to be very dominant. And I think this team is it's an air raid offense, but they've built it in a way that Dabo likes to see development. He doesn't bring in true transfers. He likes people that have been bred into the system and that know how to play his brand of football. And I think that's really what's going to take him far. So whether you're looking at the offensive side or you're looking at the defensive side of the ball with maybe TJ Parker, who's always going to be a threat, Sammy Brown, who's only a sophomore now, and he's always been talked about as, oh, he's going to be this great player, and other things like that. I mean, you have to look at this team and say, wow, they're going to be well-rounded. And again, just to go back, I know I'm glazing Clemson a little bit, but going back and pulling it back to Cade Klubnik, he really has shown himself, I think, as the true number one. He's a very accurate quarterback. He doesn't let the big moments take over, and he likes and he invites competition. And I think that's something that, again, we haven't seen with Arch Manning. Granted, he hasn't played enough for us to see it. And we haven't seen with Garrett Nussmeier because Garrett Nussmeier, I feel like in big games, tends to shy away, tends to not be his true self until he gets going in the third and fourth quarter. And so a lot of things can be said, but I think this Clemson team is going to be great, and I think Cade Klubnik should be your Heisman favorite going in because of the fact of his precision and just the overall system is built for him to thrive. So I'll leave it at that. I'll say that for sure it should be Cade Klubnik number one in my opinion, followed by Garrett Nussmeier, and I think followed by Arch Manning. I think
Yeah,
it's going to be
sorry.
very close, but yeah. No.
The other thing is August 30th, first game of the season, LSU and guess who? Clemson. So, and also that weekend, Texas and Ohio State. I really think that this could be a very, very interesting opening weekend because Death Valley goes to Death Valley. That is LSU playing in Clemson.
Yeah.
And you're going to see Texas in the horseshoe. And I think it could develop to be really a standard setting opening weekend of football in 2025.
Exactly. And we're going to see two potential, honestly, quarterfinal, semifinal matchups in week one. So, very likely to see those teams play each other again later down the line in the playoffs. So, we'll leave it at that and we'll move on to what is happening with spring football and why are so many teams either refusing to show off talent or are trying to keep everything private and not displaying their full potential.
So, yeah, an interesting phenomenon has been happening, which is understandable but very strange. So, Texas was one of the teams that decided to pull the plug on their spring football game. Now, for those of us that reside in Austin and enjoy getting to go to DKR for free and pay too much for a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich, it was disappointing. And it's also always a good to go get a look at the team, get some better understanding, get some better understanding of the depth and things like that. And at least I feel much better in assessing Texas coming out of a spring game. I feel much better assessing a lot of other teams as well. And I didn't really get that chance this year because so many were canceled or were hot dog eating competitions. And in terms of why, for me, I think it's two or threefold. The first, I think, kind of prong of it is obviously you don't want to get anybody hurt. Now, from a maybe a principle standpoint, from an idea standpoint, I can understand this. It makes sense. You don't want to get Arch hurt. You don't want to get a guy like Ethan Burke hurt. You don't want to get Anthony Hill hurt. Like, just let's just Texas examples, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, South Carolina doesn't want to get Lenora Sellers hurt. They don't want to get any of the top tier talent that they have to end up being out for the season because they played in a spring game. But on the other hand, I don't understand why you'd ever cancel it because you have 100 guys or more on that roster. And I know the rosters are changing, the size is getting cut, blah, 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 blah. You still have guys that won't see the field. You still have guys that won't see the field on special teams. You still have second string, third string, probably even fourth string. So why would you not make two teams of second and third string guys, give them a lot of reps, a lot of snaps, and you don't even have to give them your playbook. Because if that's a concern, that the playbook gets out or something like that, right? You can have them run other teams' playbook so they just learn how to play against other teams, right? So if they're on defense and you run what you've seen South Carolina run or run what you've seen A&M run or run what you've seen Oklahoma run, you can run all these different programs, run plays like what they would run. Then you use that, you take from that, and you learn and get experience as if you were playing in games because the talent's going to be comparable, the physicality is going to be comparable, maybe not as good as the starters, but it's going to be comparable. So then you get all of this wealth of experience, and you can learn how different teams want to play football and how they want to attack you. And I think that's very valuable for coaches, seeing who they might want to bring up to second string, who they might want to put in the fourth quarter when you're beating Louisiana Monroe 30 billion to 12. And those kind of situations, I think it'd be immensely valuable. And you forget the entertainment value and just allowing the fans to kind of come and celebrate their team in the spring. So I think that's a really, really valuable thing. And I don't understand why teams would cancel it personally. But at least in terms of the player injury avenue, I don't really see an excuse. I don't see an excuse in terms of exploiting the playbook or something like that. And I also don't really see an excuse in terms of cost. You're paying $40 million for the roster. Might as well use it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it goes to show that I think most teams that don't participate are now looking at it at, oh my God, it's such an expanded playoff. We're going to have to play possibly 18 games, not even. I don't think it's like 16, 17. But if you're looking at it from an injury standpoint, I think Kieran hit this dead on. You can do so many things just to mitigate that issue. Maybe go half contact on all players or just display your team like a little bit by giving us a hint at the future. Show us players that might not be able to get a chance at playing in, let's say, a big Saturday night matchup, but let us see like players and let's just see the development that's coming through. Give fans a little taste of that because I think that's like the big thing. It's supposed to pique fan interest. And you can say for Ohio State, Texas, their fan base isn't getting any smaller. And so why host these games? But it's almost just a way of displaying strength. I feel like this whole thing is almost like it's almost like a showcase for a team just to say, hey, this is what we've been doing. This is how excellent we've been looking. And we're not afraid to show it off due to injury or this. Because believe it or not, you have so many things to mitigate injury. You have all these like health ways and all these different stretching, all these different new technology. And so I think if you're really worried about that, do a more conservative game, half pads, um, touch, whatever you want to do, whatever is easiest that you're not worried about the players. Show us like the speed, show off your players almost. Like Kieran said, you're paying an arm and a leg now with NIL. So really display your strength. I feel like that's a good way of it's almost like a way of a gorilla beating his chest. It's to display your strength and to scare off opponents. Like, hey, we're coming for you this year. Like, be afraid. So enough of that. We just want to get that out there. Like, why is this happening? I would love to see the future direction, but let's keep it moving. Number one thing that we always do here is that we always cover recruiting. And we'll kick it off with the 2026 year. We haven't been going down into individual players, but since it's been a while and we're looking at it post spring, let's look at which teams are taking a lead in recruiting and are jumping up the rankings. And honestly, it's pretty surprising to see where some of your big blue bloods are placing. So, Kieran, who do we have up first?
Yeah, so up first at number 15, perhaps surprisingly, perhaps not, we have a team that usually is not very known for their recruiting, but instead for their quarterbacks drawing zero targeting fouls, Cal. So, Cal had a good season last year, did pretty well, had some issues, shall we say, with a certain Miami team and a certain penalty, but they are somehow 15th in the recruiting rankings for 2026. Congratulations to Cal. Good job. We're very proud of you. They have 22 commits, 3 4-stars, and 18 3-stars. So it seems like they're building out a pretty good recruiting class, got some good depth, and there's really nothing in it to separate them from the teams around them, like Minnesota at 16 and Arkansas at 17. And then above them, we have
your good old fashioned, I believe it's Nebraska. Oh no, Rutgers. I get confused. I get confused.
Yikes. Yikes.
So Rutgers, the thing with Rutgers that you have to keep in mind is that they're building a team slowly but surely, and I mean they I believe are one of the oldest teams in college football. I don't want to say two things incorrectly, but I believe they are one of the oldest teams, and they actually have a pretty good recruiting class. Again, what you need to keep in mind from now and then to the future is that this is the beginning of the season, and most commits that are the top dogs, they're either already committed to a team or they're looking to make a transfer portal switch. Like players like Fajon Brandon, who is going to certain teams, like maybe in LSU, I believe. Keyshawn Henderson, number 3 recruit, is going to Houston. you don't know what their true intentions are, and the season is very young, and there are plenty of flips that are bound to happen. Nobody is locked in until basically March next year, and that's when they really comes together. But they have a composite rank of 14. They have four 4-star recruits, and they have 19 3-stars. So they're keeping it the same as California, just following that path of getting 3-stars, and they're staying local. A lot of these players, you look at California, you look at Rutgers, they're staying in location. So California staying in Cal, Rutgers, they're a little bit more spread out. You have people from Virginia, Philadelphia, Georgia, Maryland, but it's still in that northeast side of things. So that's all I got for Rutgers. But next up is
Florida. So the Gators, you see a little bit of a change in terms of the makeup of the recruiting class. They have count them, 7 4-stars and 6 3-stars in their recruiting class right now. They are separated from Rutgers by 9/10 of a composite point on the rating system we're using. And thus, Florida has a pretty good top 15 recruiting class. Now, I don't think this is where Florida's going to finish. I think they're going to add commits. They might even add a 5-star. You would expect Florida to hopefully be a bit more of a recruiting powerhouse, but I think it's a good base for Florida to build on. And I think at this early stage, they're looking pretty good.
yeah, and
And up
same can be
next,
said. Yep, same can be said for LSU. So Go Tigers are basically they're number 12, and I believe that's where you see a real jump. So they're actually 215. So they're actually 4 points higher on the composite score. But what you need to keep in mind is that each player is being recruited almost by star value. And what I'm going to get by that is we're looking at each of these players, and everybody gets ranked out of a 0.99, a 1.00 scale, and that's basically kind of like a GPA, where you rank each player and they go down by ranking depending on how good they are. Now, the average rank or the average commit for Florida is a 90.69 out of 100. The average player for LSU is 95. So they're bringing in better talent. We see our first 5-star commit, and this is Tristan Keys out of Mississippi. He plays wide receiver, and again, this is a wide receiver university. It kind of makes sense. And again, LSU is one of these teams where look, they might be all the way down here right now at 13 or at 12. I mean, but we're going to see a big jump from them sooner or later, and they're going to probably jump up because a lot of teams love or a lot of players like to go to LSU, and LSU's it's a real pull for all these southern states, and again, that's where most of your football powerhouse players and powerhouse kids come from. So expect them to jump. But at number 11, we have
Illinois. So this may surprise you, the fighting Luke Altmaiers, but I think this is pretty telling of the stratifications that are beginning to appear in college football. Because you see teams like Florida, 13 commits, LSU, 10 commits, compared to Illinois, who just barely pips both of them, but has 23 commits to do it. 19 3-stars and 4 4-stars. So you have to look at the different kind of recruiting process that a D1 team like Illinois, a Power 5 team, goes through when compared to an LSU, a Florida, and then we'll see in a minute a Texas. So they're looking more for that kind of 3-star talent. Yes, they will get 4-stars, maybe the occasional 5-star, but you really have to look at it in a different method. It's kind of like Texas or an LSU or something, they know what they need. They know the holes they have to fill, and they can go find a guy, get him, and fill that hole, right? Usually on the roster. Not all the time. Some of them are going to be busts. Some guys are going to bring in as a 3-star to play on special teams and will end up starting for them, or will walk on, end up starting, and become an All-American safety. It depends, right? There's all kinds of different options, and obviously the recruiting process is randomized. But you see teams that are on the higher end really trying to get quality over quantity and take shots and get guys that they know will be quality for them. As opposed to teams like Illinois, where they're kind of just throwing darts at the board, whoever they can get to commit. Obviously, the higher the better, the better talent, the better, obviously. That's what I mean by that. But the more guys you can get to commit, the better off you're going to be in terms of when those guys that don't work out, fall out, go to D2, go to FCS, go to wherever, right? Then you can really kind of cull the cream of the crop and take that and make a pretty good team out of it. So,
Exactly. And that makes sense. So moving on, we have a UCLA, the Bruins. And fun fact, I'll keep it short. Me and Kieran are going to actually be in LA starting Friday. We compete in an event, so we'll be right next to UCLA. But anyways, UCLA is like your Illinois. They have 0 5-star commits, but they're just bringing in 21 commits as of right now, and they're all 4 stars or 3 stars, and mainly 3. They have 16 3-stars and 5 4-stars. And I think as of right now, it's just location based. I think a lot of these people are just going to places located close to them. So UCLA, again, in California, it's a major city and it brings in a lot of talent. So I feel like you're going to see that they may be lower in their average commit, lower than LSU, and kind of what Kieran was saying. So they're almost like an Illinois. It's just, I believe that they're bringing in more 4 stars than what Illinois will be able to keep up and keep going with. So I expect UCLA to be not as high as 10 in the future. I believe they'll probably drop, but they'll be around, I feel like, a top 20 for sure. But anyways, moving on after that, K-Mac, who do we got? You're muted. I think you're muted.
well, it's bound to happen eventually. Up next, we have Texas. So they have a total of 15 commits, 2 5-stars, 8, that's how you do that number, 4 stars, and 4 3-stars. So they're averaging a 89.9 in terms of player rating, I believe. Yes, they are. And you see that Texas is kind of looking for, again, I'm saying this, they're trying to fill the spots that are needed, not just get the best guys. So I think there's kind of that bouncing back and forth, that kind of deal that Texas is looking for in terms of finding the right fit and the guys that they need to fill players like potentially an Arch Manning if he leaves, like an Anthony Hill, like a Trey Moore, like an Ethan Burke, those kind of guys, right? So you look at Texas and you look at this and you can kind of see that it makes sense for them. I don't think Texas is doing too bad. I think they'll probably end up finishing top 5 or at least top 7-ish, maybe. We'll see. But I really think that it's a good recruiting class for Texas so far.
Yeah, and after them, we have Miami, and they're in the exact same boat. They have roughly the same amount of commits, actually the exact same, 15 commits for both, and they're bringing in star players. They have a 90 average recruit, and again, the one that consists of 1 5-star and 1 5-star and 9 4-stars. My bad. And again, they're keeping it local, and they're a great team that brings in a lot of players. And again, this is due to probably prestige, location, a little bit of money, but we can overlook that. But yeah, they're going to be bringing in some really top talent, and so expect them to be dominant throughout the entire recruiting phase, as they're just again a hub for a lot of players to want to join, a lot of players to want to go to. So I would definitely expect them to be at like roughly in the exact same spot they are in right now, maybe a little decrease because I mean we still have yet to see Bama, which we can speak about later, but Bama will probably surge up the rankings, and all these top teams will begin to surge back up the rankings, like Michigan. But yeah, as of right now, I think Miami is not going to. I think they're going to be stagnant for a little bit. They're still going to bring in commits that are relatively close to them, but they are number 8.
Yeah, so at number 7, we have Penn State. 0 5-stars, 10 4-stars, and 10 3-stars. Average rating's a little bit lower, 89.5. But I still think it's a good class for Penn State. Penn State's been on the struggle bus since I don't know when. I don't know when they're going to get off the struggle bus, honestly. I don't know if James Franklin needs to be removed from the struggle bus in order for it to just become a regular bus. But Hopefully, this recruiting class will be the one to do it. Penn State fans have been saying that since, I don't know, 1997. But, there's hope. I think maybe. I don't know. I don't have a real good gauge on the Penn State fan base, honestly. I am perennially disappointed in them. And I realize now I'm just using their recruiting rankings to bash the team. But, obviously part of recruiting is turning them into good players that win you games. So obviously that's an emphasis for Penn State. And maybe that's why you see a little more 3-star and 4-star interest as opposed to 5 stars.
Yeah, and straight off of that, we have a team that's not. I guess I would say in the same struggle bus. This is Clemson, and again, a lot of people are predicting them to be immediately off the struggle bus and back to the championship aspirations. But I think the big thing that you have to take away from here is that Clemson, I don't really see a lot of involvement in the transfer portal, and I mean, I guess everybody sees that, but I feel like it's a testament to who they are that they are still in number 6 of all teams. And I guess the only that are other shocking are USC and A&M. The thing you have to know about them, we'll get to it, is that they have a lot of money up there, and I don't think Clemson gets the exact same amount of funding. I actually don't even think they're in the same ballpark with funding for football. So again, this is a testament to Dabo Sweeney and his excellence as a head coach and his process of bringing in talent and talent acquisition and just altogether just being such a well-rounded team that they don't even need to utilize the portal because of how good they are doing. So next up, I believe, is Ohio State.
Yes. So usually very high on the rankings. Ohio State is a little bit lower. At number 5, they have 16 commits, 2 5-stars, 12 4-stars, and 2 3-stars, averaging a 93.1, which is a very high player rating. I think Ohio State is well positioned, honestly. If I was other teams, right, I would be worried about Georgia. I'd be worried about Bama. I'd be a little concerned about Michigan. I'd be absolutely terrified of Ohio State. So, I think Ohio State is building something that isn't dominant or particularly deadly in the way you think it is. They're beatable in the regular season. They are. They were beat last year. They slipped up due to all bringing in transfers and new recruits and having this huge compilation of superstars, right? The team isn't going to work great together. They're not going to be the most, punchy teamwork, all in this together unit. We saw that from Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, literally 2 of the least similar people I've ever seen together in a running back room. But for me, I think that means that come the playoffs, once the whole team has put their differences aside, you're going to see a team that looks nearly impossible to beat. And, you know, unless you're Texas, unless you're Georgia, unless you're a team like that, it's a real big powerhouse, they are impossible to beat. And the only game where Ohio State looked even a smidgen of beatable then was that Texas game. So they've looked a little beatable, right? Obviously, they ended up getting the win by 2 scores, but they were in danger at some point. But you look at every other playoff game, didn't really ever look like it was in a whole lot of doubt for Ohio State. So if they can tune it up again with these little additions, then I think they're going to be great.
Yeah, and just to rattle through them so we don't take up much people's times, I'm going to do 4 and 3, and Kieran will finish off with number 2 and number 1. So number 4 is Georgia, the Bulldogs. And what you need to know about them is that, again, they're consistently recruiting defense, though. And I guess you can always say defense wins championships. So they're bringing in some good safeties, they're bringing in some good cornerbacks. But for the first time ever, they actually have got a 5-star commit out of Nashville, Tennessee, who's going to play QB. That's their number 1 overall pick, and he's actually the number 3 in his position. I believe he, again, is behind Keyshawn Henderson and Fajon Brandon. So just keep that in mind. Georgia's looking to actually find themselves a true quarterback because we haven't really had a true guy in the system since Honestly, I would say Jake Fromm. If you look at Stetson Bennett and JT McDaniels, they were both not highly scouted. I mean, Stetson Bennett walk on. And then, I guess Carson Beck would be the main guy. I can't say that, but he really hasn't displayed what we needed him to, and he jumped ship. So I can't really say much about him, but I'm just going to leave it at this. I'm going to say I think if Jared Curtis, based off what I've seen from him, I think he's really going to be dominant. So I expect Georgia to stay in their position. I think they're a top 5 recruiting powerhouse, like always. And at number 3, we have our runners up. We have Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, and they actually have 0 5-star commits, but they're bringing in 18 4-stars. And again, I think this is because it's also the prestige that plays a little like twist into who Notre Dame is, because Notre Dame is this team that's built on like work hard, play hard, and that whole system that shows that they belong in the championship games. They're going to start bringing in kids who are not as focused on the money, but are focused on the winning. And I think that that's going to be a great thing for Notre Dame, is they're going to display that. Again, I think they're going to be an NIL killer almost. They're going to show that not everything is about money, and you can win a championship focusing around just the pieces and the grit and the power of the team. So those are your 4 and 3. And Kieran, let's hear the number 2 and number 1.
Yeah, so number 2 is Texas A&M. They have 19 commits, tied with Georgia, Notre Dame, and those kind of programs. 1 5-star, 16 4-stars, and 2 3-stars, average of a 92.3 out of 100 on the player grades. Not really going to put a whole lot of stock into that, but it is what it is. So Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, they've had some struggles. Wait, sheesh, Mike Elko. He had some struggles under Jimbo Fisher too, but I'm talking about the more recent struggles. I know it's hard for Aggies to tell their struggles apart because they happen so often, but that's not important. So Mike Elko, he's a very good coach, and they have right now a very good recruiting class. But I think it's kind of, you need to look at it a little bit differently than just the raw rankings and the raw numbers. Yes, the numbers are good, but you have to look at what are they trying to replace. They're trying to replace a Marcel Reed. They're trying to replace that injury-riddled running back room from last year once they all leave for the NFL. They're trying to replace guys like Trey Zune on the offensive line. They're trying to replace a lot. And, Texas A&M, they could get some more big gets, and I think they will. But when those really big dominoes start falling in terms of commitments in the 5-stars and the really top 4-stars, to me, it seems like Texas A&M is one of those teams that doesn't steal a whole lot of guys. If you're going to Texas A&M, you're going there because you at least at some level want to be there, right? You're not going because they're just stealing you away from a team like Texas, even though they have a lot of money, right? There's teams like Georgia and Florida and Ohio State who are going to have perhaps a little bit more and perhaps a slight, edge in recent results to steal and flip people. Because if you're going to Texas A&M, you're believing in either the money or the long-term future of the program, not immediately right now. So I think for right now, it's a great recruiting class. They have put together a very successful recruiting endeavor, but that hasn't necessarily translated to the results they need on the field. And then at number 1, perhaps surprisingly, I think this is the first time we've mentioned them since God knows when, Lincoln Riley and USC. Now, a interesting thing to note, in the composite points, they're about 20 to 25 ahead of Texas A&M, but they have 11 more commits. They have 30 total commits. They have 10 3-stars, 19 4-stars, and 1 5-star. So averaging a 91.8, which is a lower average than Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, and LSU. So they're not exactly recruiting the super top tier of player, but they're recruiting well and they've got a lot of commits. But again, I think USC, if you're going to USC, you're believing in the long-term vision. And once Texas or Georgia or Bama flashes that cash and that SEC championship from last year, or that Sugar Bowl championship or whatever, I think they will lose some of those commits.
Yeah, and I feel it's the same. I feel like it's shocking to see USC so high up, but again, I feel like it's again location and money that are really the two driving factors here. And again, I mean, I don't want to diss them; they're a great program, and Lincoln Riley is a phenomenal head coach. But I'm really interested to see if they're going to actually stay at number one. I feel like the 30 recruits is really just carrying them above everybody else, but we'll see what happens. So this is going to be wrapping up the episode, but we have one final question. Kieran, how little can a team do and still make it into the college football playoffs?
I think you would be surprised because last year we saw teams that squeaked in, like I guess, like your Clemsons, right? That squeaked in at 12, like you could argue kind of a team like Boise State, like uh, SMU that just won their conference, right? And then had to get taken in, and teams that didn't really prove themselves extensively, but were able to get into the playoffs. And I think for some of the big names with the big high power rosters, that's going to be the question. Because I know they're going to tell you that they want to win the SEC and they want to win all of that. And I believe that some of them do. I do not believe that Ohio State does. I do not believe that Ohio State actually cares. Because to me, if you cared, instead of the kind of reaction we saw to the national championship, which was like, we did it, this is what matters, we're very happy about it. Obviously, you should be happy, but it's kind of like getting lucky and being able to steal a diamond when you weren't able to pickpocket somebody's watch, right? Like, they should be able to take care of Michigan. They should be able to take care of the Big Ten. They should be able to do that. And if they're going to do none of that and then win a Big Ten or win a national championship, but they can't win the Big Ten, they can't beat their hated rival. I don't really think that Ohio State cares. I don't think they do, right? And I think you're going to see more programs like that. I think there's potential for Georgia to turn into a program like that. Not saying they are now, but I think they could be. There's potential for Texas to turn into a program like that. There's potential for Oregon to turn into a program like that. There's potential for Texas A&M to turn into a program like that. So I think that even Ole Miss, if Ole Miss gets a good roster and then is able to squeak into the playoffs at 9-3 or whatever, and then go on a run, I think that's kind of what they're looking at. They're not looking at the SEC. They're looking at how much can I start my second string, how little starters can I injure on my way to 10-2, losing in the SEC championship game and headed to the playoff, right? Or even 10-2, didn't make the championship game, headed to the playoff. It doesn't, I don't think they care that much about the seeding. And so I think the biggest question for me this year is how little can they do, right? Because Ohio State, they weren't really a favored seed. They weren't a conference champion. They weren't any of that, right? So I really think it becomes that kind of a question of what can they get away with? What can they get, the kind of dis- almost disenchantment with this regular season that we are seeing? How much of that can a team get away with and then turn it around in the playoffs and win the national championship?
Yeah, exactly. And I agree totally with Kieran's points, and I think the main takeaway is that a team is now able to water down their schedule, and not meaning the teams they face, but the level of competition. It is no longer we need to win every single game. We need to play like it's our last, because it's not anymore. And for conferences like the SEC, the Big Ten, even maybe the ACC to some degree, you are now able to lose a couple of games maybe even want to lose maybe not even want to make it to the championship game because you might have a better chance of just making it in even if you come third or second because no matter what, it doesn't matter. There's not this big emphasis on I win and I'm going to be the top four. I win and it's going to have this implication. I'm going to jump up in the stand. No, now it's just let's play our brand of football. We can take everything chill. We lose a couple, and we still make it to the playoffs, and then we can really kick it into gear. And I feel like it's just a sadder way of playing football because now you no longer care about showing like your strength and always doing your best every single time you touch the gridiron, but more or less you just are there to do as good as you can, and if you lose, it just rolls off your back. It no longer is like there goes our championship hopes. It's now okay. We lost one. Let's not lose two more. It's almost like a conservative game. It's not. We're not going after win everything. It's more or less let's just lose. At worst, we can lose two, and we've lowered the bar. So that's all I have. Kieran, you got anything else?
No, not really. Other than I'd also say it takes the fun out of a Mississippi State or a Rutgers or an Illinois having a team like an Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia or Texas on the ropes on a Friday night on a game that you thought was going to be a nothing game, but now Texas's, season hopes are on the line. That's not really the case anymore, and I think we've lost something there.
Yeah. But that's all I got. So this has been Beyond the Snaps Return, episode 42. And mark your calendars, everybody, because we are going to be dropping personal vids. We might even drop some podcasts that are going to turn into videos. We are going to be rolling out the carpet because we got to make up to everybody watching and make it up to ourselves and keep us accountable. And just we're going to make it up and we're going to get all our episodes back in line. So we will see you maybe tomorrow, maybe in a couple days, but we definitely won't be gone any longer. So that's all I got.
That's all I
All right.
got. Thank you for watching.
Peace.
Peace.